Hey everyone, hopefully you can hear me. Definitely let me know if everything sounds good and I'm crystal clear. Hey Golden, thanks for coming, buddy. Hey Joe. Hey everyone. Hey Kyle. Hey Gulsifer. Glad you guys could make it. Hey everyone, hopefully you can hear me. Definitely let me know if everything sounds good and I'm crystal clear. Hey Golden, thanks for coming, buddy. Hey Joe. Hey everyone. Hey Kyle. Hey Gulsifer. Glad you guys could make it. Awesome. Okay, let me just see something here. So I want this to be kind of a chill stream. Oh, I know what's going on. Question and answers. We'll actually go through the Rook frame. I'm going to talk about the frame in this. You know, if you guys have questions on the frame build, some changes that I've made, that type of thing. Try to go over all the little things that maybe I would forget on like a normal video. I'll try to do a recap video of this just so people can kind of get the cliff notes of this stream. But again, I think this will probably be maybe an hour, maybe not so much, maybe not even that long. But so you can see here we have the new Rook 180 frame that I printed out with some modifications from the pink one that I had when I announced the Rook. Minor stuff, quality of life things basically is what's in this hopefully final version of the frame. I wanted to fix a couple things and just make things a little bit easier. So essentially what we have here is I actually made some cutouts so that you can actually bolt down the motors much easier. So the bottom frames actually have cutouts here so you can actually tighten the motors down once you're ready to tension them. So it was kind of a pain to do the pink frame because there was no slots in the side. It was very difficult to get an Allen key in there, very hard to actually make that work. So there's slots on either side now on there. I have completely taken out the rear printed part. So there was a rear beam that came up here. That's completely gone. It wasn't needed at all. I made it so that the rear belted Z is now the same as the front would be. So I fixed that. Brighton, I noticed 350 millimeter rods have 3 large holes and 1 tight hole on the bottom of the frame. So on the bottom of the frame here, this is where the M12 or 12 millimeter rod will stop. So I've made it so that it goes in and it sits on that stopping point. The other small hole here is for the rubber feet. There are definitely going to be no 2020 extrusions on this printer for me. I can see maybe some people modding some 2020 extrusion bed frames for sure if they want to run some different beds like a K3 bed or something like that. But there's no real need to have 2020 extrusions on this. Hopefully that answered your question there, Brighton. So I don't know how well you can see the hole there, but basically I reduced the hole size at the bottom so that the 12 millimeter rod will only go in so far, and that way they kind of can't go through the whole frame and kind of mess up your alignment. So, and then we can see here is the belt tensioner. So this is generally how I assemble the frame. Is I will build the bottom first. I will start to install my motors. You want to make sure that you put in the M3 nut for tensioning. before you attach the motor. Otherwise, you can't get the motor, you can't get the M3 nut in here because your motor will go right there. So that's the next thing. Yeah, the printing orientation for some of these is a little bit odd for, I think, one of these. Yeah, the orientation that you print this piece in is the other way, so this hole might be a little bit oblong, Brighton. So don't be afraid to use a hammer to pound the linear rods in. Awake, I'm going to be changing the horizontal joints on some of the parts. Some of these parts don't print in the same orientation, but Wood Knight on the Discord, thanks to him basically for the idea. I will turn some of these joints 90 degrees so that there's no supports needed on the joints here for sure. That's a good idea. Yeah, Golden, I expect you to build some Rooks on your channel, man. Some cool videos coming from you on the Rook stuff. So like this, for instance, this frame here, you can print it whatever way you like. You'll need supports in here though if you print it in this direction. So I printed it like this. I printed this piece like this on my build plate, so I didn't need supports here. Hey Derek, yes, I am Canadian. So this orientation is a little bit different. That's why the hole is slightly different. And horizontal, it will still be okay, but you'll need supports right here if this was horizontal. So there's a trade-off there. Same thing with the top frame, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But so here's one of my Z steppers, essentially, right? These are going to go in here like this. Pretty straightforward. The printer is relatively straightforward. Hey, Film Factory, welcome. Yeah, so, and that's the user's choice. You can print them in the orientation that you prefer. I just was lazy and I didn't want to have supports here for the power inlet, so I just rotated a different way. The top mounts, though, it's very important that you print them in a different orientation because of how the carriages work, and I'll show that off here later in the stream, certainly. So these motors here just use M3x8 to attach, nothing special. The rear one, it uses M3x12 is what I'm using. So the rear one's really easy to do. Basically, I'll just start it here. Pretty straightforward. And like I say, that's the orientation that this will mount in. So what we'll do is we'll put in a M3 nut and we'll put in a M3 tensioner. So yeah, like I say, it's definitely, you can print it in whatever orientation you prefer. It doesn't have to be, it's not that strict. You're not really going to have any issues if you're printing it in different orientations. So what I like to do is put in an M3 bolt or M3 bolt here, and we'll get a M3 nut and we'll pop it in here. So you can see here, there is the tensioner. So we want to make sure that is in first before we install the motor. These are probably a little too short, but they'll work. So again, I like to mount all my bottom motors while the bottom frame is apart from the top. It's not as heavy, it's easier to handle. I tried to do most of the tedious stuff off camera here, so you guys weren't sitting around while I was putting on these clamp pieces. I think they're pretty straightforward, and they don't need any explanation. Yeah, you're right. That is backwards. This is why I don't do stuff on stream. Good call. Yeah, you can definitely, there's no like locating part or anything like that that tells you other than paying attention, which I was not. So let's turn this the other way so I can do this correctly. That looks a little bit better. Thanks, Tony. Good call on that one. But as I've always said with most of my printers, this is relatively straightforward. If you can get the CAD on your computer, that's a huge help. I will try to get some sort of manual in place when I get time. There's no ETA on that. Yeah, thanks, Golden. Yeah, it's definitely different for sure. That's why I tried to do a good chunk of this off stream so that I wasn't getting everything wrong on the orientation and stuff like that. So, all right, let's flip this around here. That looks a bit better. And then just something to note here as well. I usually install the feet on the back just because this motor mount hangs down pretty low. So that way you can actually set it on a table and it's not teeter-tottering. I just put these motor mounts in here first, or the feet, sorry, because you don't want to put on the feet yet because you have some bolts to tighten right here. So you want to tighten these bolts here. That's why I'm not actually putting on the feet on the front yet. Tony, yeah, ASA should work fine. I do recommend Brim and don't go crazy on the infill. 15% infill is all you need, 3 walls. That's what I printed this stuff in. For parts that need support, Film Factory, if you're printing the standard official frame, I guess you could call it, all of these overhangs here need support. Everything is essentially printed upside down for the most part, so you're printing the parts like this, right? So this is all nice and flat on the bottoms. You don't have to worry about support there. Like I say, if you're printing the original version, you will need supports right here, right? Any overhangs like that. For the most part, the bottom is not very support heavy. Line width for the walls, I'm actually just doing the standard line width that is in my bamboo slicer, which I can tell you here in a second. So line width I'm doing is 0.42 outer and 0.45 inner. Again, nothing crazy. I think 0.4 would still be okay, and I'm just doing grid infill. Nothing fancy, simple. It doesn't have to be crazy. I'm sure it would work if you were milling parts. You'd have to change a lot of stuff though for this printer to be milled. You would want to be doing a flat sheet, like a 3mm thick or 4mm thick plate, and then bolting stuff to that or something like that. So there definitely is a lot of considerations to take for when you're actually doing if you're going to be doing milling. I probably wouldn't recommend it on this particular printer. And I might just be lazy and I might not even put all 4 screws in here because, like I say, some of these parts can be a bit tedious to get a bolt in, but it looks like I can thread this in by hand. So you want to make sure that your motor can move up and down freely. You don't want to lock these in yet, because when you do the belt tensioning, you want to actually have the motor at the very top, run your belt, get it as tight as you can, and then use the adjustment screw to tension it. So you want to always make sure your motor's at the top. Pretty straightforward. That's kind of the bottom frame. I've also added some provisions here for a mean well power supply. So there's M4 holes here so that a mean well can go on the inside. I think I have one here actually. So essentially a mean well is going to sit right here. You can actually bolt the mean well in like this. So I'll probably eventually make a bracket for this here. I haven't done that on this frame. The beauty of a 3D printed frame is you can easily drill in here and add the bracket once I make the bracket. You don't have to print the frame out. It's just a power supply bracket. It doesn't need to be crazy. But this is in a Meanwell LRS 200. So 200 watt power supply, 24 volts of course. And these use M4 bolts, unfortunately. I wish these were M3, but they're M4. So again, this is going to basically mount right here. And as I said before, this is for the power inlet. I don't have a power inlet yet. I'm hoping this works. I took a step file from a power inlet, so it should just click in there nice and flush. We'll see if that's the case. I don't expect a lot of issues with it, but again, this is a beta printer, so just, be wary of that. So yeah, that's kind of a quick rundown of the bottom frame. It's very straightforward. Make sure your motors, you could build this so it's flipped, right? Make sure that it looks just like this, right? Your tensioning, your M3 tensioners should be kind of facing each other. You don't want them over here. That means you swap the parts. So that's about the only thing you really need to pay attention about, is make sure that you're actually assembling this in the right order. You don't want to have this part over here and this part over here. And yeah, choose whatever infill you're comfortable with. Gyroid, cubic, whatever, should be totally fine. Just, again, don't go crazy on the infill. All the bolts strict are M3 except for the Meanwell power supply. Basically everything is M3 except for the power supply. So the stepper motors are M3 by 8. Just the Meanwell power supply is M4. There's nothing I can do about that. And then my idlers are M5 just because I want the bigger bearings. Yeah, so M3 across the board, just like the bill of material says. If anyone wants, the bill of material is pinned at the top. Yes, it's stupid that it's M4. So you're gonna have to have some M4 hardware if you're gonna mount the PSU right here. How I'm going to be doing that. However, there's definitely some room on the inside. You can mount the PSU different if you so chose. Yeah, I wish these were just M3, but not much you can do. And it's good to have M4. It's good to have an assortment of everything around because, I'm sure as you guys know, once you start DIYing one printer, you're going to probably build another one. It's always good to have extra bolts. So I always keep on hand M3, M4, and M5, in all sorts of different sizes. And if you can wait for it, buy from Grainger in Canada or buy from McMaster Car. You'll get a way better deal. Like I say, I bought 2,000 bolts for about $100 Canadian, and I've yet to run out of those. So I just ordered 100 of each size, essentially. And it's much better if you can buy them direct from McMaster or Grainger in Canada. Oh, thank you very much, the app stop. I appreciate it. Yep, I want to get DIY printers back to inexpensive but yet high quality printers. If I had a laser cutter, I would make a printer out of wood again, just like the original replicator was, the original MakerBot. Um, Maybe some thicker wood and some materials that didn't warp, but yeah, Bolt Depot would be good too, for sure. Yeah. Canada, I think Granger is probably the best in Canada. I had really good luck with them. But if you have a local Bolt Depot in your city, that is always going to be better than Amazon for the most part. You can just buy so much stuff like in bulk and save yourself some money. So yeah, that kind of wraps up the bottom frame. So I'll set this aside and we'll talk about the top frame, and you guys can ask any questions you might have about the top frame. So I'm going to move this out of the way. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The XY carriage. I'm only going to really focus on the frame for the most part for this live stream. So let's try and get this better situated here. Yeah, like wood is very, very economical. It's recyclable. I think it's a pretty good material to make printers out of. And then again, I could take the Rook and make a one-piece frame, like a one-piece top plate and a one-piece bottom plate would be really awesome. Awesome. Thanks, John Wicks. Yeah, I didn't know Granger was available in the U.S., but yeah, that they're great places to if you're patient. Usually, I'm not patient, so I I try to order bolts beforehand when I don't need them, and it's always good to have anything from M3 by 8 all the way up to M3 by 50. I like to have 100 on hand of each of those. Math Rob, I have a laser cutter. I'm in Montreal. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in making printers in different materials and making and taking away as many parts as possible. Like, I would love to have like a CNC or something and make some carbon fiber plates and stuff like that. Vast CNC, I'd like to see a Rook with extrusion squares at the top and bottom. Yeah, there's definitely some options. I've had some thoughts of even embedding like the metal holders for the rods right into the printed part so that it's a bit easier for you to print these parts out and have the tolerances. So, but again, it adds some parts to the bill of material and stuff like that. So, not entirely ideal, but yeah, good choice. Some M2 to M5 sets in stainless. Yeah, honestly, you can't go wrong. Hey, 3D Experiments, welcome. Thanks for catching the stream. So I changed a little bit on the front. Yeah, Send Cut Send, I know about them, but I just don't know if the shipping would kill me in Canada. I might have to try them out and see. I would love to do like a aluminum plate Rook, original Rook, and just have like a top and a bottom aluminum plate. I think that'd be really neat. So maybe one day I'll get into making some revisions and stuff like that. So I'll see if I can raise this up here for you so you can see a bit better view of some of the changes here. Just bear with me for a moment. So let's see if I can get this not to be crooked, would be ideal. Hey Derek, I'm in Alberta. All right. So I've made it so that you can put in taller stepper motors in the frame. So these are 48 millimeter E3D steppers. I would recommend going with a 48 millimeter motor Oh, I did not know Sen was that cheap for shipping, so I definitely need to look into that when I get some time and and come up with some ideas. That'd be really awesome. Depending on how much it costs for me to get some cut. So for me, 48 millimeters tall, I recommend you run 48 millimeter motors. You can see here the connector doesn't have very much room from the plastic part. This should probably be cut out a bit more. If you're going to use smaller NEMA motors, you can definitely Dremel this out. That's totally fine. But I should revise this again and make a more of a cutout. Oh yeah, that's what I was worried about. Sen is brutal on pricing, so yeah. Okay. Yeah, see, I want to just come up with a way where I can make the frames myself if I'm going to start doing something like that. Like if I'm cutting, 6 millimeter thick, birch top and bottom plates. If I can do it myself, obviously I can lower the cost. So honestly, if I had like a 20-watt diode laser or something like that, I probably could cut some thick enough birch to make some cool designs for the Rook or maybe even the Rook 180, and then maybe I could sell those as long as they were stiff enough. But the end goal is to kind of simplify the frame as much as possible and but still make it cheap, right? I don't want the Rook to be super expensive. Yeah, I definitely thought about doing the MPCNC or something like that, like a build like that would be kind of cool. So once I get some more time and I get some of the projects out of my head and I don't have to worry about a lot of the intricacies of all this kind of stuff. Once kind of like Rook 180 is in a good place and my Rook Evolution printer's in a good place, then I can start thinking about other things. Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll definitely check Send. I'll see what I'll upload like a DXF or something and get a quote and see what it's like. So yeah, that's what I recommend for the steppers, for the X and Y steppers. If you want to cut this out with a Dremel, definitely you can and run a shorter stepper, but I recommend 48 millimeter steppers. I've also updated this rear bracket here. It's one piece and it's the idler now. So I took the idler that was in the middle and I moved it up here, simplified it, and made it so it's kind of the same as the front. Yeah, wood absorbs moisture, VACNC, which is bad in certain countries for sure. That was a lot of issues with the i3s back in the day when they were coming out with wooden laser cut frames for the i3. Moisture gets into them and they swell and you have all sorts of issues and stuff like that. So acrylic might be a better option or something like that. If I could get some cheap like aluminum plates cut or something like that would be really cool. But I'm assuming it would be like acrylic, or if I could find some wood that would be thick enough that you wouldn't really have to worry about moisture and warping and stuff like that as much. But carbon fiber, I know I get some things cut from Simi CNC out of BC. He's cut a lot of stuff for me back in the day, like some drone frames. I used to design 3D printer drone frames, or I used to design drone FPV drone frames. So I've gotten him to cut me G10 and stuff like that. So it's not crazy expensive, but a frame for the Rook would probably be about $80 to $90 my cost. So it's not very, very cheap. Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'd be interested in trying to figure something out for an inexpensive laser cut frame. At least for like to start, I would do the original Rook and have a top plate and a bottom frame all cut in one piece and change a couple things. Yeah, yeah, true. So 3 millimeter birch or 6 millimeter birch, I don't know which would be the best, but I'll definitely have to tinker for sure. I looked into HDPE. It's quite inexpensive. I'd have to see, again, it's all about trying to find a supplier that could cut me some frames. I wouldn't know how many I would want, and obviously the more I can get cut, the cheaper it would be. So I'd be very interested in doing that or figuring out some sort of materials that would work. Yeah, there'd definitely be some interesting materials that I could try and see if I could get some frames. I think that'd be really cool to have a do-it-yourself, open source CNC kind of Core XY printer that has a frame that's made out of something that's laser cut or CNC'd or something like that, out of G10 or whatever it might be. So I talked about here, I moved the rear Z idler up to the top and it's all one piece. You do need supports. So if we turn this around here so you can see it a bit better, you will need supports here right below these pieces here. Very simple, just 2 supports here and here. Very, very easy to take off. Cura, bamboo slicer, all that kind of stuff handles that perfectly well. Literally just come off with your fingers. Another big change that I made from the original Rook that I debuted is the idlers. If I can bring it in here, will this work? Let's see if I can get some light here so you can see. Yeah, that works a little bit better. So I've made idler carriages for the Rook 180 now. So these slide in and out with an M3 bolt on the front, and that's how the belts are tensioned. So the motors no longer move. I can actually just now move the either side in and out, the idler carriages. This makes them easier to assemble, and they slide in there really nice already. So the frame's already good for that. I'm very happy with the tolerance. They slide in perfectly. So that's also something else I added to this version of the frame, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. I'm hoping it will work, but I haven't tried moving 2 idlers at once per side, which you're really gonna have to make sure that your belts, when you first run them, are as equal length as possible, and make sure that your gantry isn't skewed. But I think this will be okay, again, as long as we're tensioning both on each side the same. So that's an update that I did on there. And then probably the most convenient update that I did on this frame is the side Y. So if we look here, I've made it so that you can take these Y rods out without having to take the whole frame apart. So it's a much, much better way to actually assemble the printer and also be able to take the printer apart. So now you can actually take the Y rod out, you can take the other Y rod out, and you can take the X and Y carriage out, which is very, very important. So we just have some clamps here that just use M3 bolts. There's some M3 nuts on the other side. Again, there's no heat sets on this printer, it's all M3 nuts. So very handy to actually be able to take that Y carriage out. So the main reason why I kind of stumbled upon that was my actual XY carriage here, which I didn't modify a whole lot on this. I took out some of the excess. You can see here I've dremeled this part out. This was just wasted plastic. You can see that here. This is all gone in the normal STLs. And then I've actually added on one side, I've added some M3 holes here and some nylock slots in the top and bottom so that you can adjust this much easier. this here is like basically pressed in and I can't adjust the distance. It will cause binding when you're trying to assemble this and trying to get the distance correct across here. So that's one reason I wanted to be able to take these out so I can replace these parts without actually having to take apart the whole printer. So I am going to change these drylin bearings on the Y, and I'm going to be using these longer LM8UU bearings on the Y. These have a little bit less play in them, and they run a bit smoother, especially on the Y, where we're concerned about the distance here and binding and such. So these are $6 for a pack of 6. Or 8 or something like that. They're crazy cheap, and there's enough room that they can be installed on the Y carriage. So I'm going to be installing those on the Y so that it helps out my motion. These bearings do not like to be skewed at all, otherwise they will bind. It works fine on the X, but on the Y here, while this worked, I don't recommend using these if you can't get it exactly perfect. So these were on the bill of materials, or they are on the bill of materials. These are drylin IGES bearings, and I'm just swapping them with normal LM8UU, but the double length ones. Yeah. I don't foresee any changes that are going to happen to the printed parts. The bill of materials is not going to change. I'm happy with all the hardware for this printer. So again, it's fine to order parts for this. I'm not changing anything that's on there. Like I say, the only thing I recommend is make sure you run 48 millimeter tall motors. I don't know if a motor like this won't work. It's too short unless you Dremel out this part here. So this is too short to actually fit into that slot. You'll hit the connector, but you could modify, just Dremel that out. So that's why I'm saying I recommend 48 millimeter motors. You'll get better speeds anyways if you run larger motors, and they sit nice and flush now. Before on the other frame, 48 millimeter motors would stick out the top. That's not the case anymore. So I'm pretty satisfied with the frame. I'm very satisfied with the bed. I had no problems with it or anything like that. And again, we can see the carriage here. So this actually slides in and out to actually tension the belts. The motors are now stationary. So this is a 48 millimeter E3D motor that I'm using for my X and Y. And I'm just taking them right from the pink build, so they'll pop in there, and M3x8 screws hold that in. And just something to note as well here for any of you building this printer, if I can show it on the camera here. So there is a motor bolt in here. So there are 4 motor bolts if you want to use them. I'm only using 3, but if you take this clamp out, there actually is a cutout and a motor bolt will go in there. So you can put 4 on if you want to. 3 is completely fine. You don't have to have 4. So again, it's up to you. There is a hole there though. Once this clamp is gone, there's a hole to actually bolt the 4th motor in there. And then for belt tensioner or for belt idlers, again, here's the idlers for the Z. M5 bolts go in there, toothed idlers. And then you'll have a toothed idler here with an M5 bolt as well. So not again, On a printer like this, there's really only one way a part will go on, and a lot of the parts are specific to their front or rear. So like you can see these clamps here are smaller than the front clamps. You can't mix those up. These carriages here have a cutout and the appropriate spot. So again, just pay attention to when you're installing them so that the belts can actually run through. What else can I tell you about the frame? There's not a whole lot. Again, it's quite straightforward. I do have holes in the frame here for mounting an acrylic panel if you want. Yes, I would highly, highly recommend, Tony, that you run LM12, normal LM12 bearings for the Z. Drylin will absolutely bind on you, and they're not, the Z doesn't move fast. It doesn't need a Drylin bearing. I have some cheapo Drylin bearings. They didn't even fit on the 12mm rods that I have. So I just bought, these were all I could find on Amazon. You would buy the half length ones. These are double length. They still work, but the bill of materials have the half length ones of these. So I highly recommend just run regular ball bearing LM12 UU for the Z. And the Z will be butter smooth. Yeah, I think these are, I think 30 millimeters is the length for the 12, if I remember correctly. It's 24 millimeters for the for normal bearings. These are 12 millimeter wide. But I think the LM12 UU, I think they're 30, and these are 50, I think. 50 or 55, something like that. They still work. This is all I could get on Amazon. So that's that there. And like I say, I find these longer LM8 bearings to be more, have less play. So I recommend these for Y if you do want. The printers seem to print fine though with Drylin or a bearing this wide. But again, if you want to make this printer as good as it possibly can be, go ahead and order yourself some longer double length LM8 UU bearings for the actual Y rods. Oliver, the Z is completely stable. These are crazy heavy and very, very strong. There's no bending or flexing that you're going to have on these rods. They're very, very robust. Yeah, that should be great. Yeah, 45 millimeter length. That's what these are. I think 24 is the normal length. So these will also work too in the X carriage as well. I'll take apart. I'm actually gonna see if I can pull this apart. Yeah, okay. So let's just take apart the X. The X carriage will also be able to take larger bearings. There's lots of room. So here is the X carriage. The tool head bolts to this with 4 bolts. So the tool head bolts to the top here and then to the bottom. That's how the tool head actually mounts onto this. You can kind of see the tool head right here. I still have my orbiter 2 and everything mounted to it. So you can mount this directly to your X and not have to worry about having the hot end or anything on it. Hey Nuno, welcome very much. Welcome to the stream. So again, very simple. There's just a slot here for M3 nuts. Slot 2 on the bottom, and that's what holds the tool head onto the X carriage. Part cooling, these just thread into plastic. I'm going to actually take that off so you can see a little bit more. So let's take those parts out. It's just for layer cooling, so there's no need to put like M3 nuts or anything crazy like that. There's nothing heavy going on this. I'll double check, Brighton. There should be the blower fan adapter If it's not on there, I'll quickly upload it after the stream. Super, super easy. So this is your 5015 adapter. So this is the 5015 adapter, and this is the EVA tri-horn that I modified for this printer. So really, really good layer cooling with the 5050 fan. I run 12 volt fans, GDS time. So this is my GDS time fan. It's 12 volts and I'm running it at 24. I am overvolting it. I don't think making them longer. Oh, you could definitely probably make them a bit longer. They're very, very solid, and I do clamp them down pretty good, but I don't like go crazy. They're definitely tight, but they don't have to be insane. There's a lot of strength here, and that's why there's a separate top and bottom so that they clamp each other really, really well. And there's enough, these are 10 millimeter thick plates. So again, this is the 5015 layer cooling. There's two STLs. There's a 5015 adapter, and there's a tri-horn here. So that's layer cooling. So here's a better look here at the X carriage. So basically this X carriage here, there's two pieces, a back and a front, and they clamp the bearings together. So Brighton, basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a 12 volt fan and I'm running at 24 volts. So I'm overvolting it. Much better airflow. If you take a 12 volt fan and run it on 24 volts, much more airflow. Definitely higher CFM for sure. Now, I will say your mileage may vary. I've had really good luck with the GDS time. I'm running one on my Defiant cross gantry printer. I'm overvolting it to 24 volts. And I'm also overvolting other printers to 24 volts. And it works great. The GDS times seem to hold up perfectly fine with the 24 volts, even if they're 12 volt fans. So again, here is the X carriage. It's very straightforward. We have 5 T-nuts, or not T-nuts, 5 M3 nuts that go into the back here. And then we have the 5 M3 bolts. 2 of these are recessed so that the layer fan can go in the back. And they clamp the bearings in here. You can see there's plenty of room to run a longer bearing in the top if you want to. You can definitely run one of these bearings in here and then run a smaller bearing on the bottom, or you could even run another one on the bottom. That's totally fine as well. Yeah, that's awesome. 12 volt fans at 18 volts, they should last quite long. So that's generally what I do to get better cooling out of a single 5015. So that's how the X carriage, again, it's pretty straightforward. If you're running an Orbiter 2, I had to Dremel out some parts here. Just the Orbiter 2, one of the bolts had some issues here. Other than that, it was not bad. So just note that. I might make a quick modification. This is a quick part to print. Very, very easy. I'm trying to think. I believe this part, yes. So this part needs supports. You print it like this on the bed. So this is where the bed would be. You're printing it like this. You have to have supports right here. The reason for that is you want these very round. You want these holes to be super round. So you want to print it like this. So it sits like this. I'm not a huge fan of CAN bus. I haven't used CAN bus on any printer. So yeah, there's the X carriage. Very, very straightforward, very, very easy to assemble. And then we have our belt loops right here. I will just show off for anyone who is never seen or is curious about doing the idlers. So these are F695 bearings, and there's M5 washers on the top and bottom. So that's how these are assembled. You have to make sure there's an M5, just a regular M5 washer. They're 1 millimeter in thickness, and they're needed one top and one bottom. Unfortunately, 3D Experiments, I haven't oriented them in the correct spot for printing. When I get some time, I'll see if I can do that. I haven't actually done that before. I think I can just put them in Kira and then save that so they're in the correct orientation, if I remember right. If anyone can confirm that for me. Yeah, standard Voron bearing stack. You're correct. The print house. So can I have a 30-second comparison between this and a 0.1? I'm assuming you mean the Voron 0.1. They're definitely very different printers. This is much bigger than a 0.1, 180 by 180 build area. So this is more of a beginner, like entry level. It's much easier to assemble. So it's really nice if you're scared about getting into Core XY or getting into Clipper or anything like that. You can use parts off the shelf or parts you might have in a drawer to build this printer. You cannot do that with a V0.1. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll probably just pop them into Kira. I'll orient them for you guys and then I'll resave them is probably the best. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do, Golden Jaguar. Thanks. Brighton, so you got a different bearing. I'm assuming the bearing should be correct in the bill of materials, right? I'm pretty positive that it's not wrong. I just want to make sure now that it's correct in the bill of materials. It definitely should be. Let's see where my link takes me to here. You never can know with AliExpress and they change stuff around. So yeah, F695 2RS bearing. Yeah, that is the correct link. And these are Rain Dew, which is high quality bearings. So yeah, Brighton, you definitely want F695 bearings. Emboss the version and part information into the models in the future. That's definitely an option, Michael. It really depends on their part orientation, and it could get a little bit tedious for when I'm modifying parts to constantly be changing the embossing. Generally, I try to put in the part in the STL title, I'll put like V1 or final or MK1 or something like that. Yeah, I built an LDO V1, the printing house. I built a green LDO V1 and I absolutely hated the build. It was not fun. And I only print PLA, so the printer was essentially useless because PLA printing on a V0 is pointless unless you're doing a bunch of modifications. Demetrius, printing in PETG, I would really try not to if you can. I'm sure it will work. I've definitely printed some Rook parts, like original Rook parts in PTG, but PTG has like a weird softness or like a rubberiness to it. and I found that I had some issues getting alignment correctly and things like that. So some things for sure could be PETG, like the X carriage, the layer cooling fan, all that kind of stuff could be PETG. These clamps can be PETG. Like a lot of stuff for sure will be PETG. I would not print these out of PETG. Those should be PLA, ABS, ASA for sure. And I probably wouldn't recommend these PETG either. Yes, one person, I designed all these printers myself. So there's a couple options, 3D experiments. Let me get the build plate actually so we can talk about that. So if you're going to go with a borosilicate glass, which is what I'm running here, what I'll do is I'm going to actually add some holes into this part for bed screws. So the same bed screws that I have on the Rook, I will add holes. I will add one here, and one here so that you can VHB this bed to the frame just like the Rook can. And then you can just take your silicone heater and put it right on the bottom of this. And I'll try to get the holes in the far edges here so that you can still fit a 150 silicone heater on this. That is probably the recommended way to do that, or go with like a Prusa mini bed or like a K3 bed if you want to go crazy. But I made it so that these are there's a lot of material here. There's a lot of room for bolts. So M4, like the springs and knobs, so you can adjust the bed. So I haven't added the holes because I didn't have any different types of beds on hand, but I can easily put in some M4 holes so that you can run like just that cheap M4 bed spring kit that the Rook uses. Hey, Michael. Awesome. Yeah, there should be a whole lot of material. I think the worst supports on this printer are the motor mount supports. You have to kind of dig them out of the hole. I wish there was a better way for that, but you definitely need supports in the motor mount cavity. Otherwise, they won't print well. Yeah, I was definitely not a fan of my V0.1, but again, I primarily print PLA, so it's not a printer for me for the type of printing and such that I do. So yeah, I'm assuming once people start printing this printer, there's going to be a lot of bed mods, would be my assumption. Like I say, people might replace this with a 2020 T extrusion or something like that. Would give you more mounting options for build plates. I will add some M4 holes, like I say, into the three corners at least, so you can run a heater. If you're going to run a borosilicate glass like I am, and then put a heater on the bottom. Thank you very much, Petty Carl. I appreciate it. I'm trying to basically just make fun, easy to build printers for people who want to get into Clipper and also want to get into Core XY, at least for this one. I might take this idea and build like a cross gantry, fully 3D printed cross gantry printer one day. Not anytime soon, but one day. Okay, yeah. So an Ender 3 bed will fit. I actually have one. So this is a Ender 3 PEI sheet that I've had forever. It came with a printer I bought at Facebook. The print house Rook 180 is only about a week old, I think. Yeah, a week? Yeah. It's going to go through some revisions. Not anything major. Again, I will say most of the parts that you'll be reprinting are like these little clamps or dumb stuff like that. The frame, I'm really happy with it. I don't see any changes or anything like that. So anyone who wants to know, this is a Ender 3 bed on the build plate. It fits perfectly fine. You can definitely run a Ender 3 build plate on the Rook 180 if you have those laying around. The bolt holes will for surely change. Or if you're just going to do a 150 heater, that's totally fine. Then you can still put the bolts in the same spot. But Ender 3 bed does fit the frame of the Rook 180. So there's definitely a lot of room in the frame cavity for that. Yeah, I think a lot of my Rook printers, they've definitely spiked in popularity, but they're still pretty small compared to YouTube views. Um, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be just seeing my channel based on the Rook. Hey Nick R, welcome. It's yeah, I'm kind of just starting to wrap up or thinking about it kind of thing. I just wanted to really show off the frame and answer any questions people might have about building the frame. I'll do another live stream in a week or a week after, something like that, and we can start talking about the mounting the X and Y and attaching the bottom and the top and stuff like that. It is recommended. I definitely do use a hammer to hammer in the 12 millimeter rods into the bottom of the frame. So I'm not going to do that on stream because it's going to be loud and annoying. Nuno, I don't plan on doing a linear rail Rook 180, but I can almost guarantee you there will be mods for a linear rail Rook 180 on the Discord. That's going to be a very common modification, and it will be very easy as well. You could bolt the linear rail right to the frame on the side. Same thing here. You can bolt the linear rail right to the frame. It will be very easy to actually put a linear rail mod together. Same thing with this here. You could just cut this out and put a linear rail, bolt it right to here. Like, honestly. It should be very, very easy. The printing house, yes, I am in Canada, Alberta, Canada. Oh, awesome, Petty Carl. That's awesome that YouTube is still putting me in the recommended for like my Rook kind of printers. I don't know what it is about the Rook ones, but I think the fact that they're Core XY and quote unquote inexpensive compared to most other Core XY printers, I think is why I'm getting in there. Yes, Nick R. I do have some small plans for the Defiant. It's in pretty rough shape. I don't have a main board. I stole it for this. I want to do a lot more videos on the Rook or on Defiant, my cross gantry printer. It's my most high-end build, if you can consider that. I don't need to do a lot to it. I just want to change the belt tensioning and make the belt tensioning more user-friendly. And I want to do some more videos. So, I mean, I have a big mess here, but I'll show you guys some people who are new to the channel and don't know. But there is my Defiant cross gantry printer. It literally has dust on it, which is unfortunate. It's an awesome printer, and I want to do some cool stuff to it. I want to put a Trident bed on it, a 250 Trident bed. So like a really nice, like I forget what they're called, like Miranda Roseworks. They're sold in Sparta 3D. I want to put a really nice 250 Trident aluminum plate on it. I want to put a heated bed on it and that type of thing. But I had to pillage the FiSec Spider off of it because I don't have any other boards that would support 6+ drivers, unfortunately, for the Rook 180. Yeah, it might be the water. There's a lot of 3D printer YouTubers in Canada for sure. Yes, thanks, Nick. Mandela Roseworks. I had one of those on my Simple Core MK1. I had a 250 Mandela Roseworks build plate, and it's awesome. They're really, really nice, and one is going to go on my Defiant. So, yeah, it's tucked away. All the wires are all over the place. I took the board from it, and I needed it for Rook 180. And yeah, glad to see that you're going to build a Rook 180 Petty Carl. Definitely check out the Discord. If you click on the GitHub link that is pinned to the top, please join my Discord. There's a lot of people on the Rook 180 channel and all the other channels, and you can take a look at my other printers. This isn't the only printer I have a lot of them. Yeah, that's my retirement, is that Pi that I have sitting on the ground. I'm not even going to use that Pi for Defiant because I have a laptop to run Clipper, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that Pi. Maybe I'll use that Pi in my second cube that I'm building. Yeah, my second cube frame is sitting back there too, so get ready. Anyone who's interested, I'm going to be doing the second cube build on live stream. Oh, thanks so much, 3D Experiments. Yeah, I really, I'm trying to just make 3D printing more accessible and simple and get rid of all the proprietary stuff. I don't like doing anything. I don't like doing any extra work for no reason. I don't want to cut my own 2020 extrusions and buy like, tools to do that. I don't want to drill and tap them, things like that. I want everyday people with minimal tools to be able to build printers, and not just an Ender style printer like Core XY, cross gantry printers. And if you can 3D print a frame that's rigid and works well, you can customize your printer to whatever you would like. Yes, I do have an AMS sitting right beside the table. It's a full X1 actually down there. So yeah, I'm so glad I kickstarted the Bamboo Lab X1 because it's able to do this for me. I'm able to do this so quickly because of that printer. I shouldn't say that just because of that, but well, glad I could help, Brighton. I think you're going to learn a lot by building the Rook 180, and we're here to help you for sure. Yes, Cash Crumb, I have thoughts on making some sort of hybrid wooden printer, resurrect RepRap, like resurrect the OG printers. Now that we have modern hot ends and extruders and Clipper, I think we can resurrect some of the older designs and older building materials and still have awesome printers. Awesome. Welcome. Glad to see you guys, Petty Carl and the Printing House. Happy to see you on the Discord. There's a lot of information on my Discord and a lot of people building the original Rook and also the 180. I'll show you guys the 180. There's probably some people who've never seen it. I can put it up on the table so you can see. So here's the 180 little baby. I just put it in here. So there's Rook 180, or original Rook inside the Rook 180. Yeah, I have like 9 printers myself. The print house. The X1C is surprisingly compact though for its build area. It's so streamlined and compact. For 250 by 250, it's insanely small. Awesome. Yeah, the Homer mod. It's a cool mod. Definitely one of the cooler mods for the Rook for sure. Nuno, for the Rook 180, I did run Input Shaper when I first built it, and I got like 22,000 on X. And then my Y had some issues. So I only got like 5K on the Y, but that was because my tolerances were weird. I fixed it after the fact, so I would expect around 22K on X and Y, but the X definitely was 22K on Input Shaper, and Y should be following very behind that one, or not far behind that one. So, yeah. Yes, the Rook 180 or original Rook was what started all of this. It is the start to all of this. Um, I think there's almost 40 people who've built this on Discord. I've issued 40 serial numbers for the little tiny Rook, the original. I will say I am going to be making some changes to this original one eventually. I'm going to be getting rid of both Z and just use one belted Z in the back. I'm going to be fixing some things that I don't like about it. So if you're interested in the original, the little guy, the 120 by 120, hold off until the belted Z version comes out. This is very equivalent to a V0. This has way better PLA cooling than a V0, even with my crappy like blower duct here at the back. I compared this directly with a V0 that I had for some time, and this was better for PLA for sure, and it's cheaper. The print house, you can for surely take the motors and things like that. There's definitely some people who've stolen Creality stuff and built a Rook for sure. Yeah, 3D experiments. I'm hoping to make the original Rook maybe at least $15 to $20 cheaper, and yeah, like as others are saying, basically the Rook. This is like such a small, little, easy printer to modify. It's awesome to learn CAD. It's really cool to modify and have fun with. This is a little bit different. It uses linear rails and then linear rods for Z. I'll let you guys have a little bit better look at it. I had to steal the motors, unfortunately, but otherwise it was printing and it does print very well. I don't even know if I still have any prints from it, but you get a better look at it here. It prints very well. There's just some things on here that I don't like. I want to get rid of the lead screws and the couplers. Those can get out of the bill of materials. I want to get rid of 2 Z steppers and just have one. I'm going to move the stepper to the back and it's going to be belted Z. And then I'm going to have the bed a real cantilever bed. So there'll be a bed frame on the back. I'm going to change up these Z rods so that there's no binding anymore. That type of thing. If you don't print these top and bottom parts perfectly, these rods can be out of alignment a little bit and you'll get binding on your Z. So I want to kind of make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'm going to be making some changes to those. But everything up here I'm really happy with. I just want to change a few things. Yeah. This printer does use sensorless homing, so just note that. There are spots here you could put an end stop though. So you could definitely mod it to be able to use normal end stops. I do have an end stop mount that goes right here for the Z, so it just hits the Z if you want to use that. I'm using sensorless homing for the whole printer. But, and then yeah, this is the fan this is the blower fan. It's a 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter, I can't remember, blower. It's on the bill of materials, I believe. Theodore, I'm happy to do it, and I enjoy this. Designing printers and making them more accessible to people so that they can build different type of printers like Core XY. This is not just your typical like normal printer. So, and then this fits on a desk. It's just the perfect size for just a printer to just sit beside your computer and just print off some PLA parts. It starts up really fast. It prints fast. You can get your part off really quick if you need to print some toys for your kids. This is the printer to do it on. Yes. The fan is, this printer is so small. Like there's my hand, right? I'm touching the printer. This is a tiny printer. It is really the same size as a V0. I think it's a little bit shorter. And obviously this can't be enclosed, but I'm definitely glad that you joined as well, the printing house. Definitely gonna be seeing you on the Discord, and I'm sure you'll be building at least one of these Rooks, whether it's the small little guy or the larger 180. I am also basically taking this idea, and I have a Rook Evolution, I'm calling it, that's going to be coming out probably in a month or so. The Rook Evolution is both of these ideas combined into a Patreon printer that I'm going to be selling the files on Patreon. This is still free, and the Rook 180 will always be free, but I want to take what I've learned from this printer and also from my Rook 180. I want to make them into the best tiny, fully 3D printed printer that I can, and that is called the Rook Evolution, and that's on my Patreon. Yeah, I mean, you could throw this in a backpack really easily. It's such an awesome little printer. Thanks for joining, Oliver. Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to wrap up. I wanted to just really make sure that I answered as many questions as I could about the Rook 180 frame. So I will do another live stream on the Rook 180. We'll go ahead and we'll assemble the X and Y, or I'll show off the X and Y so that you can get a better idea on how it's assembled and how it should be working, and any little tips and stuff like that. There's going to be more YouTube videos as well on the Rook 180. There's probably going to be more videos of this printer as well on YouTube, right? Because I am going to update this printer to make it even better. So look out for those. Yeah, the Rook is definitely easy to travel for sure. Yep, definitely. Just sit up beside your laptop, print out some PLA knickknacks here and there, or whatever parts you want to print, Ronnie. That's exactly what I intended it for. Is this printer basically lives right beside my computer most of the time and prints a lot of stuff for me. I just had to take it apart because I needed the motors. Awesome. I hope to see you around, Printed House. But yeah, that's all I had, guys, for this live stream. I really appreciate everyone coming to the live stream. I'm happy to answer all the questions and that type of thing, and make sure everyone has the information to build one of these printers or build a Rook 180. Thanks, Brighton. I can't wait to see your build. I'm very curious to see who has the first official serial number for Rook 180. I obviously have serial number 0, but serial number 1 is up for grabs, and that's just for anyone who's watching. I do issue serial numbers for these printers. So if you join the Discord, you can show a video of this printing, and I'll issue a serial number, kind of like what Warren does. Thanks Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Great to see you all. Great to chat. Awesome, Nick. Can't wait to see your build. The little one is just called Rook Printing House. It's just literally called the Rook. Awesome. I'm going to hold that to you, Golden Jaguar. I want to see some Rook builds. Oh, yeah, Rook Evolution. That's going to be a pretty neat printer for sure. So I'm hoping to make that even easier to print. So thanks, everyone. Definitely, if you haven't joined the Discord, check out the pinned link at the top. It's on the GitHub. My Patreon's on there if you want to subscribe to Patreon. Like I say, there's a Patreon tier for the Rook Evolution. So if you want teasers on the Rook Evolution, that's where you'd find those. There's also a dedicated channel for the Rook Evolution if you're on Patreon. So thanks, everyone. Great to have you, and there will be more live streams coming. Thanks all.